you may end up having to essentially confiscate lots of family pets which are not dangerous or are not, very difficult, and you may end up having to kill them. It's actually not the Home Office, it's DEFRA that are leading on this. And having spoken to people in the government this morning about it, it looks like banning this breed is probably not going to happen. It's probably going to be too difficult to do. What the government is looking at instead is the potential for licensing and maybe licensing breeders. So bringing in legislation which means that if you are breeding these dogs, you need to have a license so that they can start to try and recognise exactly what these dogs are. The problem is that might not be retrospective. So for any dogs that exist at the moment, they may well just have to exist as they currently do, which wouldn't solve the problem of very dangerous dogs. There is existing legislation to try and stop people from having out of control dogs, and the government is going to try and do more with the police to try and show them what powers they have at the moment which exist. But I think the real concern from ministers is that if you were to try and ban this breed, you may end up having to essentially confiscate lots of family pets which are not dangerous or are not, very difficult, and you may end up having to kill them, which would of course be a very controversial thing to do. It's worth pointing out that there is a coalition of people like Battersea Dogs and Cats Home, the Kennel Club, who say that breed-specific legislation is the absolute worst way to go about this. You shouldn't be looking at specific breeds. You should be looking at temperament and what happens, if someone's bitten.
But if they all come back to this breed, and it's not a proper breed, I acknowledge that point, but if we heard an expert on 75% of those killed by dogs have been killed by American Bully XL. So saying, a breed-specific thing is not the right way to do it, I understand, but you're going to end up with these dogs committing these offences continually, aren't you?
Yeah, and this is where the point of tension arises, because there are some really big questions about the American Bully and whether or not the small pool of breeding or dogs that were bred from in America, which were then brought over here, whether actually there were some genetic characteristics in those original dogs which mean that it's more likely that the American Bully can be aggressive. Now, not all dogs are aggressive and dogs can be trained. They should all be trained. All dogs, whether you've got a tiny one or a big one. I was bitten by a tiny dog when I was a child, like really, really little dog. Any dog can bite. The problem with these American Bully dogs is they are so massive. We're talking 9.5 stone. That's a massive animal. You cannot hold that back. If you're bitten by a little dog, you can get rid of it. So I think, there are always going to be questions about whether there is a genetic element here. It's just not something that legislation alone is going to be able to solve, I think is what the government is saying.
So just finally, Kate, talk us through the politics of Suella Braverman tweeting about it. Did she tweet about it in an impulse because she wants to be on the right side of an argument? Or because in some ways she's tweeted about it and set a policy hair racing, and we don't entirely know how to get to the end of it now.
Well, what's actually interesting is that DEFRA was already consulting on this. They have been doing work and looking at already what they can do to license this breed, and they will be the ones who will lead on the policy. I think, look, Suella Braverman is responsible for policing. Police do play a huge part in this. And there are some questions from the community, people around who say, well, this dog, before it bit this child, everyone in the area knew it was a dangerous dog. And the police do have powers to issue control orders, but those are not necessarily being used. So she will be under pressure. But I also think Suella Braverman is one of the members of the cabinet who is more likely than not to say things which she knows will sort of go down well with the public and with some of the newspapers, because she understands what people care about, and there is an element of this.
And might not care if other people in the cabinet who have to deal with the problem suffer from it as well.
Well, I actually think probably Therese Coffey, whose department is looking at this, is not a million miles away from where the Home Secretary is on this. I think there is a recognition across government that this breed is problematic. It comes down to a point of law of how you actually do it where it starts to get tricky.
The politics of killer dogs. You'd think it would be straightforward, but it isn't. Kate, good to speak to you. That's Kate McCann there, our political editor.